All right, guys, welcome back to the show. And before we go ahead and get into our next segment, I just realized that I did not remind you guys in the last segment that if you have any questions or anything that you want to add to the show, just go over to our super chat and type in your question or your comment. That's gsmcsports.net. Any tips and donations, always appreciated as well. And then any questions or just if you have just anything in general that you want to talk about, just go ahead and type it down in the chat. And we'll get to it. So let's go ahead and get into the next part of our show here and the third segment we have. And we got some kind of a fun segment that we got that I wanted to do here. Just some hot takes / bold predictions. Now, some of these might be a little bit out there, and some of these, most people probably wouldn't agree with. But these are just things that I just thought were kind of fun that, could plausibly still happen. You never know what the NFL season can bring. It's always full of surprises, usually anyway. So I always think that these sort of segments are fun because, it just kind of is just entertaining, to think that certain things might happen. And these are all, I think, relatively plausible. I don't think they're too off the wall. Maybe the first one might be a little bit, but the first one, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. The one that I brought this up in our production meeting earlier. I have the hot take of the Chicago Bears will not only make the playoffs, but they will get to the NFC Championship game. Now, I don't think they'll win. I think they will end up losing to whoever it is, whether it's the Eagles, the Lions, whatever the case. But I think the Bears will get there. I think they have the team, and they're building a unit that's going to be talented enough. I mean, take a look at the Commanders last year. They're a perfect example, of a team that you don't really see coming, and they can still surprise some people. But if you take a look at what the Bears have done so far in the offseason and what their offense is potentially going to look like with Caleb Williams potentially and hopefully getting much better under a better offensive-minded coach in Ben Johnson, and keeping those weapons around him, and maybe adding some weapons in the draft, whether it be through the running back or, something like that, or maybe another receiver. But I think the Bears have the potential to really turn it around and be one of those teams, that goes, from being dead last in the division to, going on a run and making the playoffs. So I have them making the NFC Championship game. So the other take, I have a few takes here, so we'll just kind of get through them. Another take that may be bold just in the history of this team, but if you really think about it, it's not really too unrealistic. I have the Raiders making the playoffs, and that would, I think, mean that there's going to be 3 teams in that division that make the playoffs, and I think that's definitely a possibility. Because the Chiefs obviously are going to be most likely the winners of that division, although, that's kind of the safe take. I have a different take, of course, but the safe take or the safe bet is the Chiefs will probably win the division. That's kind of just what they always do. You got to figure they will, at the very least, make the playoffs next year because, they're too well coached and too talented, and Patrick Mahomes is too good of a quarterback. So they'll be in the playoffs, but I also think the Raiders will, because take a look at what the Raiders have done so far this offseason. They've gotten a whole new coaching staff. They got Pete Carroll coming back, and he is the Raiders coach now, and he's brought Geno Smith over from Seattle. And, of course, we've got the young tight end Brock Bowers, who's going to be going into his second year. And, teams typically like to see rookie players make the second-year leap. And if it is a leap from his first year, it's going to be a tremendous year for Brock Bowers at the tight end position. And obviously they re-signed Max Crosby on the defensive front too. So that was a good decision going ahead and getting him locked up. And I just like what the Raiders are doing, and I think they could surprise some people and maybe sneak in as a wild card, maybe get third place in that division and maybe sneak in depending on how the rest of the conference goes. But that's who I have making the playoffs there. That's my hot take for that particular one. Another one is that the Buffalo Bills will finally get to that precious Super Bowl. And if history tells us anything, they will probably lose that Super Bowl, because that's kind of what the Bills do when they do get to Super Bowls. They just lose. I mean, they went to 5 straight Super Bowls in the 90s and lost every single one of them. Or it might have been 4 straight. I might have that number wrong, but my brain's just kind of mush from looking at a bunch of stats and history and all that over the past few days. But yeah, the Bills have had that curse of, just being absolutely heartbroken in the playoffs. But I think they finally get over that heartbreak and they get to the Super Bowl. And, it's too early to do picks, but I got to think that if the Bills finally get to the Super Bowl, they got to win it. They got to win it this time. They can't just keep going to Super Bowls and losing them. They have to win it at this point, and I think that would be great to see for all the people of Buffalo, the city of Buffalo, and of course Josh Allen, because he's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. So it would be cool to see him get a Super Bowl ring or get to play in the Super Bowl, because at the very least we would see some really good plays and really crazy plays from Josh Allen, as he, is that backyard football kind of player. So I have the Bills there as one of my hot takes, and maybe that's not a hot take because of how talented they are and how they're always in there at the end anyway. And so maybe it's not necessarily a hot take, but the fact that they haven't been to the Super Bowl with Josh Allen and that unit around them with the coaching staff and all that, I guess that would be kind of a bold prediction more so than a hot take. So, because I feel like a lot of people would probably believe that the Bills would go ahead and get to the Super Bowl, because they've been favorites before. They were favorites last year at certain points of the year when they were playing some really, really good football. Despite the fact that the Chiefs were the number 1 seed overall, the Bills, some people actually thought that this was going to be the year that they would beat the Chiefs. I thought it might be as well, but it just didn't end up working out that way. And, they ended up losing another heartbreaker to Kansas City. So that's a hot take there. The other hot take that I have, it might break a bunch of people at ESPN's hearts, but Mike Tomlin will have his first losing season this year. And I also almost put this as a hot take as well, but I just don't think this is going to happen. But I almost put that the Steelers will finish last in the AFC North. But then I remembered the AFC North has the Cleveland Browns in it. So the Steelers will most likely finish third, I think. I don't think they finish behind the Browns. They never have, and they never have finished in last place in that division, So don't predict that they will actually do that, but I think that this might be the year that they have their first losing season, especially if they go ahead and sign my favorite quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, the guy that I love to talk about, in a negative light, of course. But I just think that combination there is just not going to be enough to overcome that, seemingly unending record of him managing, or Mike Tomlin that is managing to get his team to 10 wins or 9 wins and either sneak into the playoffs and get blown out, or just miss the playoffs because they lost some games that they shouldn't have lost at some point during the season. But that's another hot take that I have there. And maybe they finish last in the AFC North. And honestly, I think that might be the best thing for them if it happens. I really would not be totally against that. Sure, it wouldn't be fun to watch as a Steeler fan, to watch your team lose game after game, but I would at least be at peace with the fact that they're going to be in better position to draft their potential franchise quarterback next season in a draft class that is much better than the current quarterback draft class this coming draft in just a few weeks, I guess, at this point. So the other bold prediction that I have, or hot take, is that the Chargers will be the team that wins the AFC West, not the Chiefs. So I just like what the Chargers have done so far, and I like that they added Najee Harris to their running back room. I think that is a good signing, good pickup for them, and I think he'll fit right in, and he'll have a much better quarterback than he ever has had as, a running back, as a professional running back. Because, yes, he played in Ben Roethlisberger's final season, but Ben Roethlisberger's final season was not the real Ben Roethlisberger. So he was a shell of his former self at that point. So Najee Harris has not had good quarterback play his entire career, really, and now he gets to go to a place that actually has that as a threat. So now he can get a little bit more opportunities to maybe make some plays, and I think Jim Harbaugh is a much better coach to be able to put him in the right positions to make those big plays. So I like Najee Harris going there. And, they lost Joey Bosa, but really he hadn't really done as much as what they would have liked in his time in LA. So I don't think they were too concerned with letting go of Joey Bosa. They did re-sign Khalil Mack as well. So that's another piece that just comes back to the defense. So that'll be good. They shored up some secondary with Dante Jackson. Dante Jackson was in Pittsburgh, and I personally thought that he was a solid defensive back. He led the team in interceptions. He did battle through a back injury towards the end of the year, and it kind of held him back a little bit. But I think when he's healthy, he's a solid corner. He may not be a lockdown corner or anything like that, but he was definitely an upgrade over what the Steelers had the previous season at that position. So I like Dante Jackson there. And, of course, they shored up their offensive line as well with Mekhi Becton, so I really like what the Chargers are doing. And I think that they could sneak this AFC West division title right from underneath the Kansas City Chiefs. That's, it's a prediction, but, I think it's very possible. They've got the team to be able to do it. They just get a couple of players on offense. They re-signed Mike Williams, who really had his most success as a Charger previously before his 2 stops in New York and finally in Pittsburgh last year. So he's back, and I think he fits right into that system as well. So Chargers winning the AFC West, that's what I have. And the final hot take that I have here is I think that 2 teams are going to go worst to first in the NFL this year, both of them coming from the NFC side. And the first one may be kind of cheating a little bit because most of their team was hurt last year, but I have the 49ers going from worst to first. They were worst last year. They were last place in the NFC West because of tons of injuries to Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy fought through a couple things too. Tons of injuries. Brandon Ayuk was hurt. Deebo Samuel was banged up a little bit from time to time. And that's just to name a few. They had a ton of injuries, and it really ruined their season. And this is still a very good team. So I think they absolutely have the potential to get right back into contention in the NFC this year. As long as their guys can stay healthy, I really think that the 49ers can be one of those teams that go from worst in the division to first in a division. And the other one, which is part of my hot takes that kind of connects with the first one, so we'll kind of bookend it here with the Chicago Bears as a team that will go from worst to first. That's right. The Chicago Bears will win the NFC North and head to an NFC championship game. I have high hopes for the Bears, and I'm sure I will be crushed or, proven wrong or whatever the case as the season, goes on, because the Bears tend to do that with their fans anyway, is they get their hopes up in the offseason only to have them dashed when games actually start to kick off. But I think it'll be different this year. I think the Bears are going to be good this year. So that's who I have as my 2 teams going worst to first. So those are my hot takes. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you disagree with any of them, which I'm sure most people probably do because they're hot takes, they're made essentially to be disagreed with. That's to get the conversation going and to get people to give you likes and all of that fun stuff that we like here on YouTube. So before we go ahead and get into the last 2 segments of our show, we're just going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about we've got 2 top 5s to end the show. We've got a top 5 current quarterbacks, which will be next, and then the final segment we're going to do wide receivers as well. So stick with us, and we are going to be right back right after this break.